Welcome to MSP Confidential. We have one more episode, and today I have the very, very special privilege of bringing on my friend, one of the best dudes in the channel, Mr. David Weeks. Weeksy, welcome to MSP Confidential,
Hey,
man.
awesome. Good to be here, and that's very nice of you to say, Luis. I'm pretty excited for this. It's you and I bump into each other everywhere, and randomly, the last time you and I bumped each other was in Birmingham, in the UK. So that was fun.
Except not lately, because it feels like you've been gallivanting all over Europe for the last few months. And are you back on the North American continent? Obviously, with Empower going on next week.
Yeah, I am actually. I'm back in cold Ottawa, Canada. But yeah, I have been all over. It's been pretty crazy. The first quarter was nuts, and a lot of events, a lot of things going on the road and in the channel, and it's been a lot of fun. So it's been exciting. But yeah, I'm back here, and then yes, off to Texas on Saturday.
That's awesome. I feel like the entire channel is converging on Texas to attend Empower, so it's going to be pretty exciting. It's good to see everybody, of course. The last few weeks, I'll tell you though, have been pretty much back-to-back events and road trips and different conferences and things because it's usually a busy time of year. But this is a brand new resort, the Omni PGA Frisco, and I think everybody's pretty excited to get to experience it. And you guys seem to have a pretty wicked agenda of some interesting tracks that are now bringing MSPs into the conversation. What can you tell me a bit about the Empower agenda and how it's different than previous years?
Yeah, absolutely. So it was changed. There was a new concept put in this year with Rob Wilburn, who you know, who runs our business transformation side and those seminars. So what we're doing is they're cohort tracks. So basically, you sit with your peers in each room. So whether you're in service delivery, whether you're a technician, sales and marketing, or CXO owner, or C-suite, and what happens is it's almost like wedding planning. So you sit at a table with people of similar size, similar problems, and the conversation is driven by peers. That's what it is. And that's really what it's all about because it's one thing I always say, and I think you've probably heard me say it in Power before, is the answer's in the room, right? It's not us. We don't have the answer as a vendor. So that's really what this is all about is everybody talking, going through what they've, encountered and how do they overcome it and their successes and just sharing with each other. So it is a unique concept and it's the first time that we're doing it. So it'll be interesting to see how people react to it.
That's great. I'm really looking forward to see how that plays out. But I'll tell you, man, facilitating is like a magic trick. Like this kind of stuff just needs really interesting folks that know how to kickstart the conversation, spark that fire, if you will. And so it'll be great to see. And I know Enable's been working on some peer group stuff. Of course, those business transformation events, which I got the privilege to attend one of them in the Raleigh office, and it hits different is the best way I can put it because I think it's just a bit of a departure from the usual, event and style of conference where it's really about the operational excellence. It's really about truly the business transformation. And so kudos to you guys. I'm excited to see the feedback from the conference, and I'm excited to see some of the witness it, some of it myself. But that kind of brings me to a question I've been wanting to ask you. Um, what does community mean to you?
Yeah, you know, I think probably the best way I could say it whenever I think about community is, and it's something that I talk about a lot out there is if there's a healthy marketplace, it's healthy business for everybody, right? And so one of the things that my mentor who you knew, Mike Cullen, always said to me was, "There's no competitors out there, right? There's enough business to go around," and that's the way that I think about it. Is as a community, as a channel, we can all work together, whether we're competitors or not. It's really about supporting each other, learning from each other, educating each other, and sharing ideas. And with that, collectively, everybody wins, right? And that to me is really what community means. And it's if you shelter yourself away from it, I think you lose out on the opportunity to drive growth and scale in your organization and to really find new areas of the market where, there's business probably sitting there for you.
Yeah. And this is an area that I think is interesting too. You mentioned new areas of the market, and this seems to be sort of the interesting, I guess, inflection of the last few years, whether it's the cybersecurity and the opportunity that exists there. I think finally people are starting to across the board see the opportunity. It's taken a while. And now we have potentially, compliance as a service or any number of other little potential opportunities that are starting to present as new market opportunities. And I know you weren't always sort of in community, although you have been always a community guy, of course. But you didn't have an official role in community. You were kind of you had strategic account sales role before, and so I'm curious how that has influenced a bit of your approach to conversations, because you're one of the few people in community that I know in the channel that goes and specifically meets with partners all over the world. And so tell me a bit of this, so maybe hybrid role that you have.
Yeah, it is hybrid. You're right. I believe I've actually already been in 7 countries this year already. So it's kind of interesting. It's a little crazy too, whenever you think about it. But yeah, you know what? When I did, you're right. And I ran strategic major accounts here, and we had a team. But when you look at the market leading service providers out there, the reason I do it is I actually go to learn from them. Like there's not a lot I can offer an extremely successful MSP business. Like I might have tidbits here and there, but really, when you look at kind of the maturity of MSPs in the marketplace, those market leading ones are typically the innovators. So they see those new areas of the market first. And when we have those discussions, then, we can start to work together and strategize on, hey, what's the best go to market here? How do we capitalize on it? How do we build programs and services around it and pricing and so forth? So for me, it's really about dialogue and education, and just really understanding what they see today and what they're going to see in 12, 24, and 36 months, and how they kind of envision that market. And sometimes it's a debate. Sometimes I do have an opinion. I'm not always right, but it's really just about that dialogue and discourse. It really does. It allows me to help us internally as an organization as well develop our strategies, right, based on where the right people and the smarter people in the market see it moving.
Mm. Well, tell me a little bit about your own perception of maybe the pivots of those opportunities, because, for the vast majority, I think we probably see it kind of like this continuum of, little changes, but there's probably been a couple of seismic things over the years that either you got through this education with partner conversations, or that maybe, in your own way, you were seeing around the corner on as well. And I'm curious if there's a couple of those in the recent years that you could pinpoint as seismic.
Yeah, you know what? I mean, you touched on cybersecurity, right? I think everybody knew security was there. I don't think people really saw how fast it was going to evolve and just how critical it was going to become. And I think that one of the things that we talked about here as a business a few years ago, and what I learned from service providers in the market who 5, 7 years ago were already getting into cybersecurity because they had that vision. At that time, I remember a partner saying to me, the insurance industry is going to be the one who dictates how we have to support these partners. Right. And at that time, I thought, yeah, I can kind of see that, but I'm not really sure about it. And, fast forward 3 years later, and what was happening, the insurance industry was dictating how you have to do this. Right. And so like when you have those conversations, I think that was a big seismic shift. The other one, I think that we saw, and it happened just as COVID was hitting, was the adoption of cloud. And we realized very quickly that that was going to be a way to move customers into the cloud, get off of on-prem. I mean, on-prem will always be there, but it to a lesser extent, right? And that was a huge shift in the marketplace because we saw the fastest adoption of cloud in the history of time. But then it became, well, how do we manage it? And are the right tools out there, right? And the services. And so, I think there's a little bit of catch up that everybody's playing on that today, but the opportunity was massive for service providers.
Mm. Yeah, no doubt. Well, the title of today's thing is all roads lead to community. And I feel like, the older I get, the more I realize it's about sort of that good-natured sharing of information, the education, um, giving freely. I actually managed to connect with Bob Berg, the writer of The Go-Giver, because this has been a concept that's been around in my mind a long time. And I'm curious just how you think about um, generosity of information in our space.
Yeah, it's a really good question. It's integral to the health of the industry. Like that's the way that I see it. And if we're not sharing and we're not helping each other, the industry will go flat and it will start to decline, right? And it's competition is competition; it'll always be there. But even as we run a head nerds team, right? And those head nerds, right? What do? They educate the market. Anybody can go to their sessions, whether they want to go to the automation session or they want to go to sales and marketing or security or disaster recovery best practices, whatever it is that they might want to do. We don't actually share that list with sales and marketing, right? And the reason that we do that is that's goodwill back to the market because it's just sharing of ideas and knowledge. And those courses and those boot camps that they do come from service provider requests. So this is just sharing information and education, and we all learn from each other. And so to me, it's about the health of the industry, and the health of everybody who's in it and their business. So the more that we share, the more we can collectively win.
Mm.
And when you win, it's good because you know what? People are able to pay their bills and take care of their families and go on vacations, and those are good things. And that's really what we all do this for, right? Is to enjoy our life outside of work.
The genesis of the head nerds, maybe let me double click on this because you've been at Enable 20 some years, and so you've seen all these programs. You know, some of them have come and gone, some of them come and stayed. And I'm curious for you to tell me a bit of, if you are able to share, the genesis of the head nerds. You know, what was the thesis? How did it come about? And any challenges in getting this sort of backed by other executives in the company? Because some of these initiatives can be, a little tricky to get support for.
Yeah, absolutely. When the genesis actually came from Mike Cullen, but it was through a discussion that him and I and Mark Andre and a few others were having in the business. What we saw was, and it really started with, it was almost a product play, right? And not in terms of selling product, but usage of the product. As what we see is, and we've seen it for years, and I mean, you'd be aware, obviously, even whenever you had, your own MSP, but people buy a tool, service providers buy tools. Those tools continue to evolve as software, vendors. What do? We do updates, we add new features, right? We bring in new capabilities, but people continue to use the tools a lot of the way that they first initially bought it, right? And they don't realize all of the other capabilities. So the genesis of the nerds really started with, well, let's educate them on the best way to use the tools and to drive the most efficiency in your business. And it was also really around trying to get more people to do automation, because we saw in the base that less than 30% were actually using automation. And so the genesis of the nerds was, hey, well, let's get the message out there with some experts who worked in MSPs, right? And that just kind of evolved from there to, well, hey, we love that, Mark Andre is, the nerd doing automation. And then it was, well, can somebody talk to me about security? Can somebody talk to me about sales and marketing? And so the team kind of formulated from there. I think the biggest consternation came from, is the term nerd the right one? And I think that was kind of the big debate internally was, will that offend people? But what was interesting when you talk to the team and you talk to Mark and them and so forth, and or Eric or Lewis, they'll say to you, like, we're proud to be a nerd, right? Like, we are very proud to do it. And it's turned into a brand for us, which has been amazing. And so, we really embraced it and kind of ran with it. And we were actually amazed how quickly it snowballed. I remember, like, when it first started, I think it was a few hundred we trained. And, if you look at it last year, it was over 15,000 service providers went through the training with those nerds. So that's pretty unbelievable.
Wow, that's incredible. Those are massive numbers. Um, what was the time horizon of sort of the entire organization finally getting, coming in and being like, yeah, this is the thing, this is going to work? Because it's not always immediate either. I feel like some of these things require a little bit of a maybe proof of concept time frame, but what was that like?
Yeah, I would say it was about a year actually. It was about a year to actually prove out the model. And I think that, there was a lot of concern in the beginning of how would it be received when we kind of launched this nerd concept, right? And it was actually pretty well received in the beginning. Of course, we did hear from a few people saying, we're not sure that we like that term and so forth. But I think that when they saw how it evolved and they saw what was really being provided, people really started to embrace it. And when we realized the engagement and the community that it built, right, the business really came on board. So I would say it was about a year. I mean, you go out and market and you've seen it, you go to an event, you go to a trade show, these nerds are superstars now, right? Like, people can't wait to meet them, right? Because they've seen them through a screen, and it's, so, the concept is really developed, and the nerds really in a way have built a community of their own, right? Based on their specialties, and they've got their, the
Hmm.
people that they work with on a regular basis. And that's really the whole concept of what we wanted in the end. And so it came to fruition, and it's still a massive success.
Yeah, kudos definitely on the Nerds program because, I catch wind on LinkedIn of some of the stuff that Steph Hammond is working on or some of the stuff that Lewis Pope is working on. And, it's incredible programming with super valuable content, business, technical, across the board automation. We know how much of a genius Marc Andre is on this automation stuff. Like he's literally the number one problem solver on this kind of stuff that I've seen out there. So it's kind of great, and I love his dedication to the role and everything that you guys are doing there. So for everybody listening, if you haven't checked out or taken anything from the Head Nerds program, go check it out because I think you'll find something valuable across any of the different disciplines that they're kind of promoting through their work. Definitely worth the while. Now, back to this hybrid role. And I know strategic accounts in many ways is kind of like this magical unicorn thing because I don't know that any one company could, define their strategic accounts role the same way as the next. And so, in many ways, I feel like MSPs work with their customers as if each one of them is a strategic account. And so I'm curious to maybe try and transplant a bit of your experience, expertise in how you went to market with your strategic account work in a way that MSPs might sort of glean some ideas or inspiration from.
Yeah, absolutely. When we built out the strategic and major accounts type role in the team, the concept was that even though there was a plan to sell, right? There's always a plan. I mean, everybody needs revenue, right? Everybody needs growth and profitability. But the concept really was a little bit different. It was, let's go in first and really understand their business. Let's understand their challenges, their needs, their gaps, their successes, and their strategy. And it was consultative in the way that we approached it. And so it didn't always mean that it was the customer spending the most money with us, right? Like I used to say to the team, when you look at your list of accounts, the one spending the least actually has the most opportunity, right? And so we have to think that way. And it could be somebody who was spending $100 a month with us, but they were 700 employees because they only had one tool, right? Strategically, that was an account that we wanted to talk to better understand their needs and their requirements. So the whole genesis and the way that we looked at it was, let's go in and be consultative. And it was typically 3 to 5 calls that we would do at these accounts to really understand their business, to talk and discuss different strategies and ideas and what we saw worked over here with another service provider in the UK or in the Netherlands, and you could try that over in North America and so forth. And really what it came down to is these ideas. And then it was, okay, well, how do we bring these to fruition? And that's where the strategic account initiative really came from. And the fruition then was, maybe one of our tools fits, maybe it doesn't. Many times we referred them to other vendors, and that was fine. But it was the concept of, if we could help you, we would. We could provide a tool. If we didn't, we would not provide you a tool, but we would get you to the right people. But that allowed us to foster those relationships. And what's interesting from that is, there are strategic accounts out there globally that have never done business with Enable that I talk to on a regular basis. And we still just strategize about their business. What are they doing? Where can I help? What have I seen? And so forth. And they're still a strategic account to us because they can be an advisor to us in many ways as well too, right? And even on our partner advisory council, we have somebody who does nobody, they have no business with Enable, but they've got a great insight on the market. And so as a result, we've kept them on the partner advisory council, and we want them there because they do bring a different perspective. So that's really where it came from, was this consultative approach to really building what we call a true partnership. And partnership's a big word for us here. And that allowed us to have a different type of relationship with them versus it just being transactional.
Yeah. And it's an inertia thing too, right? I think there are maybe forces that pull you into potential transaction land, whether it's quarterly earnings reports in some cases, or the things. And so, tell me a little bit about combating this, because as a guy who's focused so much on community and partnership and all these important things, I see sometimes my own struggle is, how do we keep steadfast on that long term goal of partnership and not sort of get sucked into maybe that vortex of a earnings or end of quarter things. And so, what's been your experience sort of navigating that?
Yeah, you know what it is, and one of the things that I used to say to the team all the time was, we only sell to a partner that needs something at the right time that they need it, right? If you're trying to force something, you very quickly lose your partnership, right? And that's the problem. And so you have to think about the end game, and you have to think about the end of the story before you think about the start of it. And that's the way that I've always looked at it was, if they might need something from us, but they may not need it for 6 months. Well, yeah, I could get to end a quarter and say, hey, I'll give you some ramp up and 30% off and do all of this, but I'm not doing right by their business. Right. And that's the problem with it. And so if you have the patience and you wait and you work with them, that relationship naturally fosters and continues to get stronger and stronger and stronger. And my belief is that, and we see it, and we have seen it, and continue to see it. When you do it that way, you naturally grow together. And when they have the requirement, they're coming to you first. And that's really what you're looking for in the end.
Mm, so powerful. Weeksy, you're just that guy that has this, you know, good stuff going on, man. I love it. The community piece. Let me get into a bit of the conference space because you know we've both been at it a little while. You've been at it a little while longer than I have, and I'm curious what is the thing that keeps you sort of connected to this fabric of the channel. And we talked about community and education, all that stuff, but I know that there's this other layer that is super interesting. Dare I say it's friendships like the one that you and I have, but tell me about your own perception of this layer of, connectivity that we have in the channel.
Yeah, you know what? You're right, and I have been at this a long time, but I think you said it. It's friendship, right? Like when you look at a lot of our partners, or if you want to call them customers, or those who don't even do business with us, I'm friends with a lot of them, right? And you build those relationships in the channel, and it's great, and that allows a different level of discussion whenever you see each other. Like I'm really looking forward to next week at Empower because I'm actually going to see a bunch of my friends, right, that I've been working with for 15, 16, 17 years, whatever it is, and we get the
Mm,
chance to catch up. And there's nothing better than face to face. And that's what keeps me going, right? Like I love being out there and hearing and learning, and that allows me to figure out what's the next thing that I think's coming, and I'm going to talk about that at the next event, and I'm going to field test it, and I might get booed out of the room, but that's fine, you know what? But because of these discussions, that's what I get to do, and it's and then there's a great part where we have a lot of fun. Like we do have a lot of fun whenever we're out there, and it's those, when you make those connections and that partnership turns to friendship, it's a very different level, and that's something then that whether you're doing business or not never goes away, which is great.
mm. I love that, man, and I feel the same way. And it's like, and it's funny because at the end of an event, almost nobody ever says, "Okay, bye, see you later." No, it's just kind of people just kind of disappear
Yeah.
into their flights, into their hotel rooms, and then suddenly we turn up at the next and say, "Hey, good to see you again." So I just find those little flywheels fascinating. But speaking of fascinations, I've always loved asking the question, what are you fascinated by in the business at the moment? What is the kind of thing that you're trying to peel the layers of the onion on, that's, kept you interested?
Yeah, you know what it is? It's a changing market right now, dramatically. In the last 2 years, there's been probably last 2 or 3 years, the MSP market of old is not there anymore. It's a whole new market, right? And one of the things that we say here is when I started, right, we were teaching people how to be an MSP, right? Nobody even knew what that meant, right? And still today, it's kind of a generic term, but today, what we were dealing with 10 years ago, 12 years ago, 15 years ago, MSPs were small and medium sized businesses. Today, they're mid enterprises. It's a very different look and feel out there. And the model that we talked about back then doesn't work today. And so, the way the market's evolving right now, the new players, the investment, all of it is super exciting to me. I mean, look at it was, tier C lenders 3 years ago. And now we got tier A lenders in the space, right? Like things have changed very quickly. And it's such a fast moving market, and it's just it adopts technology so quickly. Like that's what keeps me excited, because then you get to see the next area where one of our partners is going to grow, and they figured out something new, and they have this explosive rocket ship growth, and that's the stuff I love to see, and that's the stuff that keeps me going. Yeah.
Yeah, the M&A space is, and it translated equally into the vendor space as well. We're seeing this with the consolidation, or even just new tier A capital showing up in the channel, um, funding early stage startups, driving incredible and explosive growth. So it's been super interesting to see that unfold. And I feel like almost all the time people are Oh, this we're in a bubble. This is going to pop any second now, but it just seems to continue growing, and more platform MSPs keep popping up, and more are being started. Like, for every tier A, VC fund or what have you, they could easily find four, mid-performing MSPs in a $3 to $5 million range, and start a platform, and suddenly, be acquiring five, six MSPs a quarter. This is kind of what we're seeing play out over and over and over again. Um, and so, what have been some of the interesting deals that you've seen that have kind of followed this, I guess, new model?
Yeah, it was the combination of really where I saw the most interesting was there was people who went out there, they took the investment and they grew by acquisition. Makes total sense. Understand why you do it. It's those who have combined the organic growth and that sales motion with the acquisition where we see this crazy growth right in them. I mean, there was one in the UK when they were bought, they were doing about 5 million, and 2.5 years later, they were doing 37 million, right? But that wasn't just through acquisition, right? That was through the right business model, bringing in the right people and so forth. So, when I look at it out there today, it's, that investment has helped fuel this industry to grow that much quicker, and it's a positive thing. And I don't think it is going to burst. You're right. I mean, that it's, MSP is it's a great model, right? It is. And it's, we all grow with each other. As a vendor, I can't grow if my customers aren't growing. That's just the way that it works, right? And so we all kind of need each other. And I think that we're going to continue to see this investment. Yes, we will see some consolidation. We will see, I think we're soon going to see some very large MSPs buy another very large MSP with that funding and become kind of what they term this super MSP. I don't know if that's the right term or not, but it's I don't think it's going to change a lot, because you know what, that opens the inroads for others to come in, right? And that's really what it does. And so it we still see it. We see people coming in every month saying, I'm going to become an MSP, and that's great. But with the investment, what's changed is, we know the model of old. A lot of times it was a technician ended up losing an internal IT job, got the contract, called themselves an MSP, right? That's the way that it worked. Today, we're seeing them come in with business leaders to start an MSP, right? And they're coming in with a business model versus a technical model. And they look at it very differently. And that's the stuff that I think is really neat to see out there. And
Mm.
just, the explosive growth that's happening in the industry.
Yeah, yeah, no doubt. Well, Enable, I've always found works with a certain level of MSP that is perhaps a little more mid-enterprise, as you call them. And but there's still this interesting, spectrum of MSP that exists, from the one-person shop all the way to the, 300, 500 person shops. And I'm curious to ask you, maybe this is a crystal ball thing, but on the cybersecurity conversation, I feel like more of it's sort of becoming areas of the bottom of the triangle of services. A requirement, it's pivotal, it's a cornerstone of everything they offer. And there's people that are maybe laggards to that, and that's fine. Now, in the compliance area specifically, I'm seeing this, insurance driving requirements and all this stuff. And the bigger MSPs seem to be doing this stuff like aligning customers to CIS or CMMC or any given framework out there. But there seems to be this decidedly apathetic approach by anybody that's not required to do it, to not even start the journey. Despite sort of the industry telling us this is coming, compliance is going to be a thing. And I'm just curious to tap into your own thoughts on, like, why do you think that people are rejecting this unless they're being forced to do it? Because I feel that's going to be the thing that separates, the waters of the industry. The high performing MSPs were the ones that get left behind, right?
Yeah, I think there's two factors to it. One is it's a lack of understanding, right? And a lack of understanding leads to fear. And when people have some fear, they tend to avoid. And so the problem is you got to get over that. And you have to say, okay, if we hear it's coming, then let's start the process now and let's learn. And I think there's another thing that this industry, some have embraced it and some haven't. You don't need to be an expert in everything. You can get white labeled services. You can outsource and get help, but there's still a big portion of this industry that's resistant to that and feel that they have to do everything in house. But I'll never be a vendor that sells every single product every service provider needs or every service, right? And nor do we have all expertise in house. If we need something, we look to outsource, right? I mean, I didn't build my own billing system, right? I didn't do that. I didn't go out and get my own financial software, right? I went to the experts who do it, and I think that's the dynamic that needs to change today. And I think that's where I don't know if it's so much. I think they are being a little bit apathetic to it today, but they also have to understand the opportunity that comes with it. Because if
Mm,
you can start to drive compliance as a service, or the industry is saying you need to do this, or the insurance industry, or whoever it might be, the good part about it is when you think about your growth in a business, and we know the number one thing service providers struggle with is selling, is you're not selling now. Sell turns to a tell because the customer doesn't have a choice. They have to do it, right? Or they're not compliant. So I think if they embrace it, they can actually find those revenue streams that actually just fall in because it's now a requirement. So that's really the reason that they should start to embrace it.
mm. Well, let's just stay on the crystal ball topic for a second, so I can ask you what you think is going to be the next seismic thing in the industry. Cybersecurity, compliance. What next?
Yeah. I think that the management of cloud is going to be the big thing because there's so much sprawl in cloud, right? And security plays into that because when you're in the cloud, right? And you and I are on the road all the time, right? We have a multitude of devices that we're connecting to everything that we need to do. That's a potential risk, right? And so you have to lock down those. So to me, the next thing is going to be how do we take all of those kind of assets that people are utilizing, the services and what they're doing, and how do we consolidate that into a framework that we know how to manage, right? And so I think the next big thing is going to be orchestration. And I don't mean like SOAR, I mean general orchestration. So how do you use the ecosystem or the ecoverse and all of your different vendors, right, to be able to help you to manage that web of things that are happening out there and those devices and those services. So I think that's the next big thing is all of us as vendors have to figure out how to work together to better
Mm,
support our partners. And if we don't do that, we're doing a disservice to the industry.
mm. That's awesome. And super interesting. And we're already seeing the beginnings of that. There's a lot of tools out there. There's SIP, the tool by CyberDrain, which an interesting stat I heard that he revealed, Microsoft shared with him, 60% of GDAP migrations in the whole GDAP permissions migration scheme were done with his tool SIP, which was incredible.
Wow,
And
that
so
is incredible.
yeah. And so there's clearly a need for it. And I love that you're thinking about this because I think in the vendor space, we're introducing more and more tools, obviously, into the equation. And so giving a better way to manage just that management layer is going to be so important. Man, shoot, I don't want to have run out of things to talk to you next week when I see you in person, although that's literally impossible. But I do have, a little speed round of things that because I love you for many reasons, and I'd like people to know more about you. So here's a set of questions that may indulge me, if you will. Um, this is one I took from the Steve Colbert show. But what's the best sandwich?
Oh, I love sandwiches. So that's a tough one, but I'm going to have to go with, because I do love them, Philly cheesesteaks. Yeah, I love a Philly
All right.
cheese. A
Okay.
proper Philly cheesesteak is good. Yes.
Okay. This is maybe a little bit of a deeper one, and feel free to expand on the answer if you feel the need. But what do you want to be remembered or known for?
Um, it it's not what I did in this industry. It's that I was a good person. Like that's really what it is. I want people to say, you know what, he was a nice guy, right? He helped, he was there if we needed something, love chatting with him, right? I was friends with him. Like that to me is the most important thing that you want to be remembered for.
Mm. Well, you're doing that already, buddy. Um, what is one thing that you own that you really should throw out?
Oh, jeez. um, that's probably my golf clubs because I haven't golfed for a really long time, even though I want to get back into it and I'm not that great at it. But that's probably what it should be because I probably need new clubs now because they're about 3 or 4 years old. So yeah, there you go. Probably my golf clubs. Yeah.
I mean, 3 or 4 year old golf clubs with two uses are still new golf clubs, by the way. So,
That's
uh,
fair. That's fair. Yeah. Better technology though now.
yeah. Now, I love this idea of this question because I generally trade in little philosophies, little quotes, things that I hear that I can sort of summarize a big idea in a sentence, right? And so I'm curious if you have your own little mantra or quote or thing that you regularly throw out there as part of your persona.
Oh, regular quote. Yeah. Well, one of them, I said it earlier, was the answers in the room, right? I do say that a lot. But I think the other is that I say all the time is healthy industry, healthy vendor is a big thing that I say as well. And the other one, my mantra that's out there is, you know, just be a good person, right? Like seriously, be a good person in business and in personal life, and things will naturally come that will help you, you know, in everything that you do through business and personal. So that's really a big one I talk about.
Yeah. Along the lines of these little philosophies, I find that I'm always sort of questioning the status quo. And so I'm curious if there's something that you've recently rethought or reconsidered, maybe a long held belief that you kind of change your mind on. And this may not be an easy one to answer, but sometimes these are, top of mind.
Yeah. If you think about this industry, there is. We used to tell service providers to go out and say you're an MSP and you build your bronze, your silver, your gold, your platinum packages, whatever they are. I've changed my belief on that. That it's what I call the silo effect. You need to be a specialist in particular areas, and you need to use that as your discussion point to get into a business or to expand your wallet share with somebody. And it took me a while to come around to it.
Mhm.
And then I met actually with a few MSPs when I was out in market who aren't customers who were doing that. And I was really amazed at how well that was received in their sales motions. And even though I was resistant to it, it's actually something I talk about now out on the road is this whole red ocean, blue ocean concept. And that's really what it was realizing that as a market, just calling MSP is a red ocean. And I was resistant to that, but I came around to it and realized that there's a way to get out of that and make it a blue ocean. So yeah, that's really I'd say the most recent one for me.
Interesting. So it's from a couple of different angles. Then it's the swim lane of the niche of specialization in the customer vertical. And is it also the simplification of reducing the multiple plan options to a single offering sort of per niche vertical? Is that kind of what you're?
Yeah, it's rethinking the way that you do it, right? Like let's say that one of the things I say in a room when I talk all the time is I say, how many here consider themselves an MSP, and every hand goes up, and I say, why are you different? And you kind of get
Wow,
this
yeah.
silence, right? And somebody goes, well, we do white glove service. And I go, okay, how many here think that they do white glove service? And you get some hands, and I go, I should get every hand, by the way. You should all think, right, that you do white glove service. And I say, but it's still not a differentiating factor, right? And if you're talking to a business owner and you say, I'm an MSP, what does that really mean? Right? Because you're a managed service provider. Okay, great. But if you're talking to a decision maker or business owner and they say, I have a real concern about my security and my data is really important. And you say, well, listen, you know what? Then we're specialists in ensuring that we can protect that data for you. That's a different level of discussion. MSP, those services, they just ride the coattails. Because if you put out an EDR or you put out a backup solution, what does every MSP need to do? They have to put an agent on every device. So you just got your RMM out there. So why were we selling the monitoring side of it and the proactive maintenance side of it? We don't need to do that anymore. That's an expectation in this marketplace. So I think that specialization discussion really changes the opportunity for service providers out there, and that's kind of the big area that I'm talking about when I'm out on the road today.
Mhm. And do you see that playing out with the fast growth, high sales motion MSPs today? They're actually, doing that probably, of course.
Yeah, they are. If you look at some of the top service providers out there and you go to their website, the term MSP or managed services is buried way down on a submenu or it's not even there, right? You go in and it's cloud, it's security, it's training, it's professional services, right? Things along those lines. So they're speaking to business drivers that draw somebody in. And the interesting part about it is RMM, I believe in the next few years is going to be more of a data correlation tool. right? And this is why I talked about orchestration earlier. Your RMM will still be there to take actions, but there needs to be a layer above it that says who takes the action. Is it the RMM or is it somebody in the ecosystem, right? And let's just talk to each other and let's ensure that we understand what each other are doing. And but where I think people are missing out is when you put your agents out there from your RMM, it's collecting data from the site. So if I went in and I sold EDR and some data backup, all of that data I'm collecting from the agent is now telling me my next sales opportunity because I can see the gaps in their environment. So it's actually a way to build your pipeline, but I don't think people are utilizing or harnessing that data that sits there in front of them. And that's why I think RMM is going to become more of a data correlation tool that just has the ability to take actions and talk to a network of different solution systems and services to say, this is what you need to go do now. And it becomes almost like the single source of truth.
Hmm, very interesting. I hadn't considered RMM as that layer of correlation, and I think my own mindset about RMM is that it's going the way of the dodo bird pretty quickly because I think the layers needed to manage devices are moving to that MDM layer to the stuff that the OSs, the OEMs are providing. So interesting standpoint. But I've always also seen RMM as a delivery vehicle for all the other stuff, whether it's the EDR agent, the you name it, and so that layer of control is not always easily disposable with RMM. So super interesting. All right, last
Yeah.
question.
All right.
And do you ask for permission or beg for forgiveness? And give me an example of a time you got in trouble at work.
Oh, geez. I'd have to think about that. Oh, I do. Actually, I do remember one, and it was, and this is actually a pretty funny story. I was fairly young in the company. It was one of the first times I'd been out on the road, and I ended up out with a fairly large. It was actually a telco, like a mid-sized telco, and I was supposed to meet up with the two owners and this vice president. And we were going to go for dinner. Well, they showed up with half their families. And I ended up at this very expensive restaurant with them. And there was probably about 21 people there. And these two, they were ordering everything, the wine, everything. And I was sitting there going, I am going to get in so much trouble when I get back to the office, but I'm going to have to pay for this dinner. Right. And I paid for that dinner and it was very expensive. And when I got back to the office, I did beg for forgiveness. It took a while for them to actually reimburse my expenses. This was in Enable 1.0 days. But you know what? It was the understanding that, look, you're in that position, you had to make a call, right? And the call they told me I should have made was we should have asked to split it because they brought their families, but I went ahead and did it. So I did get in a little bit of trouble for that because it was a quite lofty bill. And then the worst part was we went out after and I paid for all their drinks too. So it did quite help.
Add insult to injury. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So, but nonetheless, they're still a customer. So
Okay. Well, maybe because of that dinner, you never know.
you never do know. So yeah, no, yeah, that was probably the big one where I got in trouble. But yeah, so not a terrible one, but still, it was a call that I had to make.
I love it. Weeksy, I'm looking so forward to seeing you next week. It's been a few months since I last connected with you. So I'm really excited about Empower. As I said, for anybody out there that hasn't learned about Empower, go check it out at enable.com. Because I think there's going to be some really, really good content that is proposing a really different way for conferences and for MSPs to really come and learn from each other. So I'm excited to see how that all works out. Excited to see you. So excited to see the channel team and Robert Wilburn. And man, thanks so much for coming out to hang for a few minutes here in this conversation. You're probably freezing your ass over in Ottawa and looking forward to Dallas. I'm in Los Angeles at the moment. I was here for some meetings and heading back to Dallas on Saturday. I could be riding around in a golf cart heckling all the golf players during the tournament, just so you know. So maybe, are you going to play on Sunday?
No, actually, I can't because I've got meetings. So I couldn't, which is killing me because I used to be a big golfer, and I mean this course obviously is unbelievable. So I'm gonna see if maybe I can sneak something in near the end of the week before I fly out, but I'm not sure if I'll have the time or not. But that's all right. I'll just get back down and play there again at some point. But no, listen, I'm really looking forward to seeing you as well, Luis. I appreciate you having me on. I always haven't, you and I always have these conversations when we see each other in market, so it's great to do it in this forum as well too. But I'm sure next week you and I are both going to learn a lot more and have those discussions and probably debate some of it as well too. So I'm looking forward to it, and of course we're going to have some fun while we're there also.
Indeed, indeed. Well, thank you again, and safe travels. We'll see you on Saturday or Sunday in Dallas or in Frisco. And thanks again, Weeksy. Love you, brother.
Yeah, you too. Take care. Cheers.